My son mocked my old coat and said, "You embarrass me. Looking like that, stop coming to family events." While relatives laughed, but when I pulled the lottery receipt from the pocket, the room fell silent. His face turned white. They say people remember the moment a room turns against them. For me, it was the clink of a spoon on crystal and the way laughter rose like steam off a boiling pot. I walked into my son Ayan's in-laws' house wearing my old camel coat, the one that still smells faintly of pine and winter soap, and I felt the air tighten around me. "You embarrass me looking like that," Ayan said, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Stop coming to family events." It was so neat and practiced that it sounded like a line he had tried in the mirror. Some cousins hid their smiles behind their phones. A waiter paused with a tray. I stood there a second longer than I needed to and looked around. "If you are watching this, tell me where you are watching from, because I want to know if respect still lives where you are, if it still sits at your table when the food is hot and the camera light is on." I did not answer my son. My fingers slid into the left pocket of the coat and found the soft fold of a paper that had been there all afternoon, quiet as a heartbeat. The fabric under my thumb was thinned by time. Someone near the doorway whispered, someone else giggled, and Ayan gave a small performative wince, the kind people use when they want to be cruel and call it honest. The foyer smelled like cardamom tea and new polish on old furniture. The long mirror at the end of the hall cut all of us into tall, shiny pieces. I kept my face still. Not anger, something colder and steadier that sits behind the eyes and decides what to do long after the noise stops. Ayan turned away, his hand already on the shoulder of a guest he wanted to impress. His watch, a new one with a name that mattered to him, flashed at his wrist. He looked good. He always did. Zara, my late wife, used to say he had movie star bones, a face that found the light without trying. "He will be the kind of man people cross rooms to meet," she would tease, pinching his cheek when he was small. I watched him now cross a room to forget me. A woman I did not know lowered her phone when she saw that I had noticed her recording, and she gave me that short, sorry smile people pass to strangers when they enjoy a little bit of someone else's pain. If you're listening, tell me your city in the comments. Tell me if fathers are invited to sit in your place, or if they are told to stand by the door and learn how to disappear. The old coat hung on my shoulders like a story I refused to rewrite. Zara bought it at a winter market years ago, when Ayan was still a boy, and we counted rupees before we slept. The seller had a laugh like a motorbike, and a table of things that wanted to be new for one more season. Zara chose the coat, ran her finger along the seams, and said, "This will last. We can't afford things that don't." I told her it was too much. She kissed her teeth and argued the price down like the hero in a film. When a button cracked the next winter, she found a mother-of-pearl one in her sewing tin and replaced it. "There," she said, pleased with herself, "a little moon to keep you warm." I used to catch her turning that button between her fingers, smiling as if she had put her signature on the fabric and it would now carry me home, no matter how far I walked. On a rain-soaked night, long before the house smelled of cardamom and polish, we rode a bus back from Murray with Ayan asleep on Zara's shoulder and the windows fogged by our breathing. I opened this same coat over the two of them like a tent. The driver cursed the slopes, and the wipers kept time. I remember the weight of my son, heavy and trusting, the way children give you all their rest without asking what you will do with it. Zara looked at me over his head and mouthed, "He's safe." It felt like a prayer and a promise at once. That night we came home to a roof that leaked and a stove that complained, and still I slept like a king because my kingdom was 2 heartbeats under one old coat. I learned to put small treasures in the left pocket, a photograph, a key, a note with numbers that kept our world standing, a folded receipt from the grocery, Zara's handwriting curling around the edges. "Tomatoes, rice, cardamom, don't lose this." She said it often. "Keep this safe," as if paper could be a charm against chaos. Maybe it could. I have always let silence do the heavy lifting in our house. Paper, too. It never argues, never lies. It only waits, and when you need it, it puts your world into a couple of lines that no one can shout down. When Ayan was 8, I stood at the back of his school assembly. He was wearing a shirt too big at the collar and a grin too big for his face, and he held a certificate so tight that it shook. "Top marks," the teacher said, and I saw Zara turn to wipe her eyes. We split a samosa on the walk home and counted coins, and Ayan said he wanted to be a lawyer because they wore good shoes and told people what to do. We laughed. I promised myself he would have enough books to build a life out of, not just a room. I worked nights, I took extra shifts, I sold the gold bangle my mother gave me at my wedding, and I told no one but Zara. We put our pride where our food was and kept our mouths shut. If your father ever did the same, say so. Tell me who carried you, so you could run faster than they ever did. Zara got sick years later, the kind of sick that eats the days first and then the years. Our house changed shape around her wheelchair, and our lives became a series of small, loyal tasks. Pills at 9, a walk at 4, music after dinner. Ayan visited when he could, and then when he felt like he should. I do not say this to shame him. I say it because this is my story, and I promised myself never to lie inside it. In the last week, Zara called me close and pressed her mouth to my ear, as if the words might fly away otherwise. "Don't shout at him," she whispered. "It changes nothing. Use your calm. It makes men listen." I can still feel the warmth of her breath when I have to decide whether to harden or to hold. Back in the bright room of Ayan's in-laws, a waiter cleared his throat and asked softly if I wanted a seat. I told him thank you and chose a chair near the service door where a small draft licked at my ankles. It was the kind of corner you give to luggage or a coat you might forget when you leave. I lowered myself slowly and put both hands on the table. I learned long ago that if you look like you belong, people need an extra second to move you. A cluster of women admired one another's shawls and bracelets and said, "The right lies in the right order." Ayan moved through them like a host, which he was not, and like a king, which he very much wanted to be. Sometimes we build thrones out of other people's backs and then wonder why they don't clap when we sit. He came over once more, as if to check whether I still existed. "You could have, I don't know, called me and asked," he said, eyes never landing on mine. "About the dress code, about anything." He meant everything and nothing. I let my face be a plain wall he could not hang his excuses on. "I brought a gift," I said, and I watched his jaw twitch. "Leave it with the others," he told me, and his fingers brushed the napkin like he needed to touch something soft to remember how. "And Dad, really, don't come to these things if you can't keep up." The words "keep up" sat heavy on the table like wet cloth. He turned and laughed at someone's joke before the echo of his sentence died in my chest. I looked at his back and saw the boy who once fell asleep against my ribs on a bus. I also saw the man who could now cut me out of photographs without a flinch. Both were true. Both lived inside that black suit, like two birds in a cage arguing about the sky. I thought about the villa where Zara chose the paint color, and I installed the curtain rods, where Ayan learned to tie his tie and then forgot I had shown him. I thought about all the Sundays we staged like polite plays after Zara died, how he would come over and talk about apps and markets while I made tea and nodded. Somewhere along the way, we built a small bridge out of routine and stopped checking whether the posts were rotting. The coat's left pocket is not a magic trick, it is a habit. Today it held a piece of paper, folded twice, edges softened by the heat of my hand all morning. The thing about paper is this: it chooses no side until you put it on a table. It doesn't care who is loud or loved. It only cares about what is written on it and what the world agreed that writing means. I stroked the fold with my thumb and felt the mild, familiar thrill of being ready, in a room that believed I was not. I did not need to stand or shout or make a speech that would make me tremble later. I only needed to choose the right second and then be very, very calm inside it. A young cousin raised her phone again to capture the moment when Ayan's in-laws brought out a cake that looked like a small building. "Family only for the first picture," someone announced, and the sentence found me where I sat and dared me to look surprised. I did not stand. I did not move. I watched the photographer call out names, watched people shuffle into place, watched Ayan's eyes slide past me as if they were wet and I would smudge them. I felt nothing dramatic, just a small, steady tightening, like a knot pulled slowly in a rope. I thought of Zara's whisper, "Use your calm." I thought of Ayan at 8, holding a certificate like it could lift him. I thought of the coat and the mother-of-pearl button. I thought of the paper in my pocket. I breathed in for 4, out for 4, and let the room talk to itself. Someone near me muttered, "Maybe it's vintage," meaning my coat, and someone else said, "Maybe it's a museum piece," which they meant as a joke. I touched the left pocket again. When I was young, I thought strength was a loud thing that made doors fly open. Later, I learned that real strength is a quiet hinge that keeps the door on when the world pulls at it. Ayan wanted me smaller, softer, easier to ignore. He wanted me to be the coat on the hook that no one notices except when they need to reach past it. I have no taste for drama, but I have never been what he wanted. I am what I promised Zara I would be. A man who can hold his own weight and, when needed, hold his family's too. If you are still with me, tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if you have ever been told to sit quiet while people who share your blood told stories about success that forgot your name. Tell me what your father wore when he was turned into a punchline and whether anyone defended him. I will keep reading because sometimes strangers are better witnesses than relatives. The room around me kept moving, sparkling, clapping, planning for the next picture and the next toast. And I waited, not for my turn, not for revenge, but for the right sentence to be spoken so I could put my paper down. Like a piece in a game I already knew how to win. The waiter came back with a glass of water I had not asked for and set it by my elbow as if he was placing a small guard there. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it in all the ways a man can mean it when he is here, and his wife is gone, and his son is a stranger with his face. I watched the ice settle. I watched Ayan glide toward the microphone and tap it twice with 2 knuckles. He smiled, and the room smiled with him. "To newer, better things," he said, and laughter swelled in agreement. I lifted my water, but I did not drink. I am not a man who toasts to bridges burning behind him. I am a man who waits until the wind shifts and then lights the path home, one quiet lamp at a time. The mic clicked once under Ayan's knuckles, and his smile rose like a kite catching a good wind. "To newer, better things," he said, and the room agreed with soft claps and little laughs that said, "Yes, yes, we are all moving upward together." I kept my hands on the table and watched the ice in my glass settle, as if it too wanted to be still. The photographer, a man with a tidy beard and a camera that clicked like a small clock, lifted his hand. "Family only for the first picture," he called, cheerful as a game host. People started to shuffle and bloom into the right places. Someone at my table cleared her throat. I did not move. I did not stand. I let the sentence walk to me by itself and try to push. It met a wall it did not expect. Ayan looked over, past the hanging lights and the tall flowers and the brave cake that had more floors than some houses. His eyes touched mine and slid away like a stone skipping water. I saw the exact second he decided to finish what he started. He lifted his palm in that polite way people learn from watching men who make decisions for rooms. "Dad," he said, not loud, but loud enough for the right ears. And then, because cruelty likes clarity, he added, "Just us this time, okay?" There it was, a sentence shaped like a door softly closing. I kept my face calm. I felt the paper in my left pocket, folded tight like a sleeping bird. The photographer smiled around a question and then did what men do when the richest voice in the room gives an answer. He moved on. Hira took Ayan's arm like a ribbon on a gift, her bracelets whispering against each other, her mouth close to his ear. Her parents stood taller when they saw us set into our roles, their side shining, and mine, somehow, suddenly dim. A cousin laughed into her phone and then turned the screen toward a friend as if I were a meme she could share. The room smelled of cardamom, perfume, and the polite heat of too many bodies pretending to like one another all at once. The waiter with kind eyes came by with a tray and a small nod, and I took a warm piece of naan. The bread was soft enough to break without crumbs. "Thank you," I said, and he said, "Of course, sir," in a way that told me he had a father whose shoes he still remembered tying. I ate slowly because slow is a kind of strength. I watched people count themselves into the camera's promise. My son tilted his chin the way he does when he wants the light to choose him. It always has. I do not envy that. I am the man who used to lift the lamp for him when the room was dark and homework was long, and the only light we could afford after 9 was the kind that burned your fingers if you touched it. When the photographer started calling names, I let my eyes move to the glass cabinet in the corner where porcelain figures stood in frozen pairs. A tiny bride and groom at the top of a tiny cake. A soldier saluting a tiny flag. A small father with a small child on his shoulders, both smiling at something they could see that I could not. It is strange what people keep under glass, memories that cannot breathe. I touched the mother-of-pearl button on my coat and felt Zara's laugh inside it, a small round sound that has outlived her, and might outlive all of us if I protect it the way I try to protect everything that matters. Maybe get him a new coat, someone whispered not far from my shoulder. Kind the way a person is kind to a stray dog. Warm voice, cold eyes. Or get him to stop coming, someone else said, trying to be funny and landing where jokes go when they are used like stones. Hira's mother floated nearby, her smile stretched tight for a joke she had not yet told. You should think about selling that big old villa, she said later, her voice light as sugar, even though there was a weight at the center of it. It's a lot for a man alone. A young family would bring life to it. You know how empty rooms make people sad. She said young family like it meant one family in particular. I looked at her and gave her what she hated most, no argument at all. Empty rooms don't make people sad, I said, in the way I tell the truth when I want it to sit between us. People make rooms empty. Ayan came back with the microphone again, making a little speech about gratitude that did not know where to look. We are so blessed to be surrounded by people who care, he said. His voice tried to include me, but his eyes did not. When he put the mic down, he leaned towards me as if I were a problem in need of a private solution. Dad, he said, and he kept his voice in that careful space between coaxing and command. I'm serious about these things. Image matters. You know it does. I waited for the part where he would apologize, or at least hide what he had done behind a softer sentence. It did not come. We don't want people to talk, he added, and he touched the edge of my sleeve with 2 fingers like he was testing fabric before he bought it. I agree, I said. We don't want people to talk. The words were a mirror. He looked into them and saw himself, and he did not like what he saw, so he walked away fast to find someone who would put a better picture back in his head. I watched his back, the way a jacket hangs on a man who jogs to stay a size that suits his clothes. I remembered the boy who once stood shaking in a school corridor before his first debate, so scared his words had gotten lost somewhere between his lungs and his lips. Breathe to 4, I told him then. In, outside, again. Words follow breath. He won that day. I held his tiny certificate on the bus ride home because his hands would not stop clapping for himself. He deserved it. He had worked. I do not rewrite that past to make my present easier. I only lay the 2 next to each other and ask what happened to the bridge. A small square gift box appeared at my elbow on a tray, and the waiter said, "From the family," without saying from which part. I opened it and found a wallet with no note, no name, no warmth. It was good leather, empty, a perfect little joke if jokes could be put in your pocket and kept there until you needed to pay for something. I turned it over and then closed the lid. Across the room, one of Ayan's friends, dressed in a suit that cost rent money, lifted his chin at me with a grin that said he had watched everything and found the camera angle that made him feel safe. Vintage is in, he called, and a small group laughed on time. So is basic respect, I said in a normal voice that carried farther than a shout, because the room wanted to hear it even if it didn't want to admit it. The laughter broke apart like a wave hitting a rock. I was not counting hours, but I was measuring seconds. The right moment has a sound. You can hear it if you have lived long enough with doors that stick and you know when the wood will give. The cake was rolled back for a time, so people could talk about it. Ayan moved like a mayor at a fair, shaking hands and kissing the air near cheeks, and letting women adjust his tie because it made them feel like aunties and him feel loved. Hira's father said something about legacy to a group of men who wanted to talk about cars instead. I drank water and let it cool the hot corners in my chest. Then I set the glass down and reached for my phone. My fingers do not type as fast as my son's. That is fine. I texted 3 words to a name saved under K. Come in now. The dots bounced back a second later. Yes, sir, Mr. Khan replied. He had told me to call him Majid since the first day we met, but he was Mr. Khan to me because he was the kind of man who would walk into a room the way a promise walks in, straight-backed, quiet, ready to keep itself. In the morning, I had stood at a counter behind frosted glass where a woman with a clip in her hair had stamped a paper and said, "Congratulations," without raising her voice. She had seen every face that possible joy can make, and she liked the ones that stayed calm. "Keep this receipt safe," she said, pushing it through the opening the way a nurse pushes a child through the last inch of birth. People lose themselves. Paper doesn't. I had put it in my left pocket without looking down to watch the motion, the way a man who knows his own body moves without asking it for permission. Zara's numbers had lined up across a screen weeks before, numbers we used to circle on calendars and lottery slips, while sitting at the kitchen table with tea between us and the fan wobbling and Ayan doing homework in the next room. My wedding day, Ayan's birthday. The number of winters this coat has kept my bones from complaining. Not magic, just the simple way love keeps showing up in places where people throw away their stubs and say, "It was nothing." At noon, I had met Mr. Khan in an office that smelled like old paper and strong tea. We sat under a clock that ticked too loud and signed things that would take the noise out of other people's mouths later when they tried to make their hurt sound like a song. A trust is a boring word. A will is a quiet fist. Titles are keys that work even when the locks are old. We wrote my wife's name at the top of things, and I felt her come and sit beside me, not with warm hands. Those I do not get anymore, but with a kindness that stayed long enough to see the ink dry. Mr. Khan does not talk much when he is working. He asks simple questions and waits for full answers. That is another kind of respect. When we finished, he closed the folder and said, "Shall I be on call tonight?" I said yes. "I will come," he said. People like him do not promise lightly. Now, in the bright room full of kind lies and sharp truths, I put the phone face down, slipped my hand into the left pocket, and felt the paper's edge. I did not pull it out. Not yet. A waiter appeared at my elbow again, almost as if the house itself had sent him. "Sir, another glass?" he asked. "No," I said. "Please bring Mr. Khan up when he arrives. He is an older gentleman in a dark suit." The waiter nodded and left, the tray bobbing like a small boat moving through a crowd that doesn't part until a man is brave enough to walk. I smoothed the coat over my knees and listened to the room's hum change by an inch, the way wind shifts before rain. Hira came to me then, the way someone goes to a door when a draft touches their ankles. She sat without asking. She has a careful smile, the kind you practice in a mirror so it never cracks in public. "Baba," she said, glancing in the direction of her parents as if the word might upset them. "You know Ayan didn't mean anything. He's just stressed. These events matter to him." She lowered her voice to that fake soft tone people use when they want to move you the way furniture is moved, gently but without asking where you would like to go. "We can get you a nice coat next week. We'll go together." Her fingers brushed the sleeve like she was blessing it. For a second I saw the girl she had been, not the wife who had learned to be a wall between a son and his father. "Do you remember the first time you came to our home?" I asked. "Zara made kheer and burned the top because she kept watching you talk." Hira's face softened. "She was so kind," she said. "She was." I held her eyes. "She hated rudeness," I added, simple as air. Hira looked away. Ayan swooped in on a gust of cologne and nerves. "Everything okay here?" he asked, as if he were a manager checking a difficult table. "We're fine," I said. He gave a tight nod. Good. We'll do the dance in 10. He looked at my coat again, then over his shoulder where people who wanted pieces of him waited with silver smiles. "Dad," he said, and he leaned in so only I could hear. "I should have told you about the dress code, but you know how it is. People judge. And I've been carrying a lot. The startup, the loans, He cut himself off, remembered something, and straightened. "Anyway, it's a new season." I looked up at him. "It is," I said. "It always is. The question is whether you bring the same weather with you." For a second, he almost laughed because he wanted to feel clever. Then he decided he didn't understand and left. The band started a slow song, one of those famous ones that lives at weddings and anniversaries and wakes and makes people think of everyone they ever loved and lost and pretended not to lose. Couples found each other. Hira's parents made their way to the center, stiff with pride and time. The crowd made a circle around them and clapped like rain. I had danced with Zara in kitchens and in the hallway, and once in the street when the power went out and the whole neighborhood was a soft black we could own for 5 minutes. I did not dance tonight. I watched the circle and thought how easily it keeps some people inside and some people out, and then tells itself that everyone had a choice. "Sir?" I turned. The waiter stood with a man at his side, dark suit, quiet eyes, a face that has learned to listen first. Mr. Khan's hair has gone the color of old paper. He carries a folder the way doctors carry charts when they walk into a room where pain lives. I stood and shook his hand, and he said, "Good evening," as if the words themselves could make it one. A few heads turn because the air changes when men who are not there to eat arrive at your table. Ayan noticed us and frowned, confused in a way that made him look again like the boy who dropped his pencil and could not find it under the desk. He started toward us, then changed his mind, then changed it back. He was still changing it when he reached us. "Who's this?" he asked, not rude, just used to owning every answer. "My lawyer," I said. I let my tone be ordinary, because ordinary can cut the deepest. He blinked. "For what?" he said, smiling at the uselessness of the question, even as he asked it. "For living," I said. "For writing things down so that people don't forget what they promised when the room is noisy." Mr. Khan inclined his head in a way that made it clear he would tolerate a son's confusion, but not a son's disrespect. I saw Hira stop 2 steps away and lift her chin, ready to play the part that protects her husband's mood. Behind her, her mother's face tightened like a fist in a glove. "Dad," Ayan said, drawing out the words so it could become a warning if I let it. "Not here." The funny thing is that people always say "not here" in the exact place where they have made sure the whole world can see them. I looked around the room that had laughed when he told me I was an embarrassment. I looked at the floor that had been polished to reflect the best version of anyone who stared into it long enough. Then I looked back at my son and I let a small, slow smile climb my face until it sat just under my eyes. "Not today, Ayan," I said, flat, and the words landed in the middle of his chest like a hand that knows where the heart is. He opened his mouth to speak again. I reached into my left pocket and felt the fold of the receipt, the way a man checks a blade before he draws it. I did not pull it out. Not yet. I only let my fingers rest there, steady, while the band played the last long note of the song, and the circle began to loosen, and the camera turned toward us without meaning to, already hungry for whatever would happen next. The band let the last note hang like a ribbon in the air, and people clapped because they did not know what else to do with their hands. I kept mine steady on the table. Mr. Khan stood beside me with his folder. The waiter hovered a step away, and Ayan squared his shoulders like a boxer who thinks the bell means he has already won. "Not today," I had said, and the words were still settling when I pulled the chair back with a quiet scrape and reached into my left pocket. The paper was warm from my palm. It made a soft sound as I unfolded it, a sound that drew the eyes of people who did not plan to look at me again tonight. I did not raise my voice. I placed the paper in the middle of the table, right where the light found it, and I tapped the top edge once. "Read it," I said to Ayan, out loud. He smiled, the way men smile when they think you have brought a small trick to a big fight. "Dad, please," he said. The "please" not a real request, but a word used to push an old man back into his corner. "Read," I said. I did not blink. Around us, laughter curled into silence. Hira took 1 step closer. Her mother took 1 step back. A cousin's phone tilted up like a beak, hungry for the next moment. Ayan picked up the paper with 2 fingers, careful like it might stain. He glanced at it and then looked again. I watched the color leave his face, as if someone had opened a small door in his chest and let the light run out. He swallowed. He tried to wet his lips. He read the words under his breath first. Some people test the rope quietly before they climb it, and then he cleared his throat. "Verification of jackpot claim," he said, the voice he uses for meetings suddenly too big for his mouth. "Authorized receipt. Amount." He stopped. He could not make himself say the number. His eyes jumped to mine and got stuck there. "What is it?" Hira asked, soft and sharp at once. She reached for the paper and then pulled her hand back as if she had touched a hot pan. The room leaned in. The photographer took a half step our way, his camera already awake. The waiter held his breath. "Keep reading," I told my son. "Clarity is a kind of respect." He stared down again. "Amount confirmed as full." "Jackpot," he said, the words dust dry. "Claim recorded." His lips moved as he counted the zeros in his head. He knew what they meant. The number did not need to be spoken for the room to hear it. I did not let the moment get big. I kept it at room temperature, the way Zara taught me to hold a pot with a cloth so the handle does not burn you. "Mr. Khan," I said, "please open the folder." He did. Paper slid out with a sound like rain against a window. "These are the trust documents," Mr. Khan said, as if we were in his office with the frosted glass and not in a house full of open mouths. "The Zara Trust," I added, and the name sat between us like a chair no one else was allowed to take. My wife gave more to this family with 2 hands than all this furniture will ever give with 4 legs. Her name belongs at the top. Ayan blinked, still holding the receipt like it might tell him he had read it wrong. Hira tried to smile and found she could not. Her mother swallowed a word that would have made everything worse. Hira's father reached for a grape he did not want and did not eat. I kept my voice steady. The villa title has been transferred to the trust, I said. The trust pays the property tax, the salaries, the maintenance, all of it. But there is a condition. There will always be a condition. I looked at my son. Civility. Basic respect. If any resident or guest cannot manage that, their access is paused, not forever, just until they remember how to speak to people who raised them. Someone laughed, one of Ayan's friends, the kind who laughs at anything that unsettles him, and then stopped when he saw Mr. Khan's eyes. "This is a joke," the friend said, but his voice did not believe him. "It is paper," I said, and I tapped the folder. "Paper is not a joke. It is the opposite of a joke. It is what you show people when they pretend they forgot." I turned to Ayan. "Last year, when your startup took water and I heard nothing from you except, 'I've got it under control,' I paid the bank that called me. I did not tell you because I wanted to see who you would be without my hand at your back. Those sums are now consolidated into a family loan held by the trust. There are terms. If you meet them, we will never speak about them again. If you do not, repayment will come from your personal assets. The paper does not get tired like I do." Hira found her voice. "Baba," she said, putting her palm flat on the table, a small flag she hoped could claim the land. "This is a party. We can talk tomorrow." I nodded as if she had not spoken and kept my tone mild. "Tomorrow is fine," I said. "So is now, because tomorrow you might say the room was noisy and you did not hear me. You might say memory is slippery. I live in clear hours. Tonight is clear." I tapped the second document. "This is for future grandchildren," I said, and I watched Ayan's mouth twitch because he had not thought that far when he told me to stop coming. A stipend for their education, their medical care, their first apartment when they need to leave home. It is generous. It is also conditional. It requires that their parents demonstrate ordinary kindness to their elders. Visits, calls, invitations, tone, measured over time, miss 3 months and the tap closes until we fix our manners. The room was so quiet I heard the air conditioner decide to take a rest. Someone's bracelet ticked against the glass. The cake leaned a little to the left. The photographer held his camera low, as if lifting it would be rude now. "You can't measure tone," Ayan said, and now he was angry because that emotion is easier for him than shame. "You can," I said. "All my life I have. Children measure tone before they know numbers. They know when love is in the room. They know when contempt is wearing a suit." Hira's mother broke then, because she could not bear to be a background object in a scene she did not control. "Sir," she said, her smile back on her face like a painted thing, "we have always respected you. There is no need to make—" She paused and chose a softer word. "Policies." I turned to her and dipped my head, a small bow for a woman who had raised a daughter I would one day forgive if she learned how. "Madam," I said, "people who respect me do not laugh when my son treats me like a stain. People who respect me do not tell me to sell my wife's house so someone else can feel big inside it. Policies protect us from our moods." Mr. Khan cleared his throat gently. "There is one more item," he said, opening a smaller envelope. "Your business shares, sir." I nodded. "I no longer run the day-to-day," I told the room that had never asked what I did after Zara died. "But I still sit on a few chairs that move when I put my weight on them. Those dividends will feed the trust. They will not feed appetites outside it. That includes in-laws who bring empty plates and ask for ladles." Hira's father stiffened. He is a man who likes to talk about legacy like it is a coat he can wear twice. Tonight, it did not fit him. Ayan set the receipt down as if it might bite. He had found his words again, and they came out ironed and smooth. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, as if hurt were a curtain he could hide behind. I met his eyes. "Because I wanted to see you," I said, simple as a cup of water. "Not your plans, not your speeches, not your watch. You. People are clearest when they think no one is keeping notes." He laughed, one hard sound. "You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I am protecting what your mother and I built from anyone, including you, who thinks kindness is an optional upgrade." Phones had lowered, feet had stopped moving. Even the gossipers were quiet because gossip dies when the truth is holding the mic. I reached into the folder, took out a pen, and uncapped it. "We can sign acknowledgments now," I said, "or we can do it tomorrow morning at Mr. Khan's office. Tonight is not about signatures. It is about knowing where the floor is. You have been walking on my back for a while, son. I am old. My back is tired. From now on, you will walk on your feet." He didn't take the pen. He looked at Hira, who did not look back because the numbers had reached her in a language she understood. Her hand hovered over the receipt like a moth unsure about the light. "Baba," she said again, and this time the word had a different shape. "We were wrong." It was the first true sentence of the night that was not mine. I nodded. "Being wrong is not fatal," I said. "Staying wrong is?" The photographer shifted his weight and the camera strap squeaked. I turned to him. "You were going to take a family photo," I said. He opened his mouth, I lifted one hand and he closed it again. I looked at Ayan. "You can be in it, son," I said in the same flat voice I had used all night. "If you can manage a please." The word hung there like a small bell waiting for someone to ring it. Ayan stared at me. Pride is a balcony people like to stand on. It gives them a view and a feeling of height. It also has a railing you can trip over if you are not careful. He was very careful. "Please," he said finally. The word came out rough and new. I nodded to the photographer. People began to arrange themselves again, slower this time, like a body learning how to move after a long sleep. I did not rush to the center. I stayed where I was and let the room come to me if it wanted to. "Wait," I added, and I turned to the waiter, my ally in the smallest ways. "Would you bring a chair from the head table? Thank you." He smiled with half his face and went. Small respect does heavy lifting. He returned with a sturdy chair and placed it to my right. I patted the top rail. "For Zara," I said softly. No one laughed. Hira looked at the empty chair and put her hand over her mouth the way people do when they want to keep something inside from falling out. Mr. Khan moved like a shadow that knew where the light would be. He stood a step behind me, not to crowd, as just to hold the shape of the moment in one piece. Ayan shifted from foot to foot. The room watched him. When you are used to winning by momentum, stillness is the hardest opponent. He lifted his chin, took one slow breath, 4 counts in, the way I taught him, and then he spoke to the photographer, not to me. "Please take the photo," he said. It was not perfect. It was a start. The camera clicked. Faces tried to remember which side was their good side. I looked straight ahead and saw the space where Zara would have stood, small and fierce, eyes shining the way they did when she was proud of us, even when we were not proud of ourselves. After the shutter, noise returned like water after a dam is lifted. People coughed. Someone made a joke they thought was gentle. The band rustled for the next song. I sat back down. Mr. Khan closed the folder and then opened it again because he is a man who knows that the second look is where mistakes hide. Ayan stayed standing, as if sitting would make him smaller. He took a step toward me, and then another, careful, because the ground had changed and he did not trust it yet. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. The question was new in his mouth. It tasted like humility. He did not like the flavor. He swallowed anyway. "Start with dinner," I said. "Sunday, the villa, 6 o'clock. Leave your phone in your car, bring your wife, come in through the front door like you live there because you do, and speak to me like I am alive because I am. We will eat, we will talk, we will see if a bridge can hold weight again." He nodded once, then twice, too fast, like agreement was a thing you could perform. "And the coat," he said, a smile ghosting his mouth because he needed to make the thing smaller to carry it. "Should I?" I held up a hand. "The coat is not the point," I said. "It never was. It is cloth. What matters is whether the man inside it is worth being seen." Hira stepped close then, and surprised me by touching my arm with 2 fingers, a small, careful piece. "We will come," she said. Her voice did not waver. "We will bring dessert." I nodded. "Bring your listening," I said. "I will make tea." Her mother looked like a woman who had swallowed a lemon. Hira did not look at her. Something had started in her that did not ask permission. Mr. Khan checked his watch. "Shall I leave these copies with you, sir?" he asked. "Leave one," I said. "Keep the rest. My house is not a bank." He slipped an envelope back into the folder, offered his hand to Ayan, who took it because shaking is what civilized men do, and then dipped his head to Hira with the kind of old-world respect that makes people want to be worthy. "Good night," he said. The waiter appeared as if from nowhere to walk him out. Another small courtesy and a night made of them. The band began a faster song. The circle on the dance floor formed again, this time looser, as if people had learned that tight rings break. Ayan stood very still. I could see the math moving behind his eyes, all the numbers in his life rearranging themselves to fit around words like trust and conditions and respect. He touched the edge of the receipt, then drew his hand back as if it might change again if he stared too hard. "Dad," he said, and his voice had no decoration now. "I'm sorry." He did not attach it to anything. No if, no but, no because. It was not a complete bridge. It was a plank, a start. I nodded once, the way a man nods when he does not want the room to see his lungs let out 3 years of air at once. I lifted my water and finally drank. It was warm now, but it still did its work. My hands did not shake. The coat lay easy over my shoulders, heavy in a good way, like a promise you intend to keep. The mother-of-pearl button caught the light and sent it back to the ceiling, where it broke into pieces and fell over us like dust. I thought of Zara's whisper in the last week, the one that told me not to shout, because shouting turns a man into a gong, and all anyone remembers is the noise. I had not shouted. I had not needed to. Paper had spoken, and calm had held the room like a bowl that does not spill even when the table is bumped. The waiter leaned in and said, "Would you like tea now, sir?" I smiled at him. "Not here," I said, "but thank you." He nodded as if I had given him something large. Maybe I had. Maybe respect is the only currency that doesn't lose value in a loud room. I put the pen back in Mr. Khan's envelope, folded the receipt once, then again, and slid it into the left pocket where it had rested all day like a small, patient heart. The paper was no longer the most important thing in the room. It had done its job. What mattered now was the space it had made, wide enough for truth to walk across without hitting its shoulders on anyone's pride. The room learned how to breathe again, but softer, like someone waking after a bad dream. Music moved back into the spaces between people, and conversations tried to gather themselves, careful now, like sheep after thunder. I leaned back in my chair and watched the edges of everything relax. It wasn't victory that filled my chest. It was something smaller and sturdier, like a latch clicking home. Ayan stood across from me with his hands at his sides, the way a boy stands when the principal has finished speaking and it is his turn to prove he heard. He looked once at the empty chair I had set for Zara, then he looked at me. "Sunday," he said, as if he needed to hear the word out loud to believe it. 6 o'clock. I nodded. "Front door," I added, and he knew I meant more than wood and hinges. He rubbed his jaw with his thumb and tried a smile that had not yet learned its new shape. "Okay." Hira slid her hand into the crook of his elbow. She did not tug him away. She anchored him, a small, factual touch. Her mother's mouth opened and closed twice without sound. For the first time that evening, Hira didn't look to her for a cue. She kept her eyes on me. "We'll bring dessert," she said, steady. "We'll bring ourselves," I said, and the corner of her mouth lifted because she understood. Mr. Khan had gone, taking with him the gravity only paper can carry, but his absence left a framework standing, invisible and firm. The waiter returned to collect empty plates, his movements respectful without being theatrical. I thanked him again, and he nodded, eyes flicking to the receipt-shaped calm on the table, before sweeping it all into the quiet that good service keeps. The photographer, a professional to his bones, came by with that careful smile men use around fresh paint. "Would you like a print of the family photo, sir?" he asked. "2, I said. "One for my house, one for my sons. Send the invoice to Mr. Khan. He enjoys paying for beautiful truths." Ayan exhaled a laugh he didn't expect. A few people around us did too, and it was the first honest sound the room had made since I walked in. The band tested a new melody. Someone across the hall called for old songs, the kind that make the past show up in a room wearing good shoes. I stood. The coat fell into place around me, weighty in the way the right words are weighty, not to crush you, but to keep you from floating away when the air turns thin. "I'm leaving," I said to no one in particular, and to everyone who had been watching, as if goodness might come out of my pocket if they stared hard enough. "There will be tea at my house on Sunday. There will be chairs for anyone who remembers how to sit in one without stepping on someone else's feet. At the door, Hira hurried to me. "Baba," she said, almost breathless, the word clean now of performance. "Can I ask, why the chair?" For Ami. She meant Zara, and her mouth softened on the name. I touched the mother-of-pearl button on my coat. "Because she still attends what matters," I said. "Because memory is a guest we should seat properly." Hira's eyes went bright, the way glass goes bright when sunlight finds it. "I'll bring roses," she whispered. "She liked marigolds," I said, and Hira smiled like she had been given a map she wanted to follow. I stepped out into the night. The air outside carried that city mix of dust and something sweet from a bakery lane you can't see. A car door shut down the street. The sky over the roofs wore a faded scarf of cloud. I walked slowly, not because I was tired, but because speed had run the show all evening, and I wanted pace to learn who was in charge now. The valet jogged to meet me, too eager by habit. I lifted a hand and he slowed. "No rush," I told him, and he looked relieved like boys do when you tell them they don't have to win to be seen. In the car, the radio played a cricket commentary, all statistics and surprise. I let it talk at me while my mind moved across the house I would go to. I saw the entryway Zara had painted a pale yellow, she called sun in a bowl. I saw the hook where my coat had hung for years. I saw the table with the simple walnut top we had bought second-hand and oiled with patience. Home is not magic. It is repetition done in love. Left turn, narrow lane, gate, the slow creak hinge that always promises you a few seconds to change your mind and go back. I did not. The villa greeted me with that deep old house silence that listens. I turned on the front hall light, and the yellow spread without hurry along the floor. The coat came off my shoulders with a soft sigh, and I hung it on its hook, my fingers finding the groove they have found 1,000 times. I took the folded receipt from the left pocket and held it too. Zara's photograph on the entry table, as if blessing a child. "Paper does not argue," I said into the quiet, using the voice I used when she could not sleep, and the world seemed louder than our walls. The photo caught the light, and her laugh, that round, bright thing I have been careful not to overuse in memory, rose in me like a bubble that does not pop. In the kitchen, I washed a cup without thinking, because washing is a prayer nobody notices. The kettle boiled, and the steam fogged the window for a second. I brewed tea. I did not sweeten it. I sat at the small table and put both hands around the heat. The house breathed with me. Somewhere 2 streets away, someone argued and someone else laughed. I thought about the words I had used like a carpenter thinks about the nails after the shelf is up. Were they too sharp? Did they hold? Would they rust? My father used to say that men either measure twice and cut once, or cut twice and measure never. I had measured for months. Cutting had taken minutes. My phone buzzed on the table. Ayan. The screen flashed his name like a knock. I let it ring twice, the old authority I keep for myself, and then answered. "Dad," he said, and the word was heavy with the things we hadn't said for years. He cleared his throat. I heard laughter behind him, wisecracks trying to reassert the old order, and then a door closing. Quiet. I wanted to say, "I am sorry," he said, clearer now, like his voice had found a chair. "I keep hearing myself, and I don't like the sound." I listened. Men are not good at apologies that move their feet. Boys are worse. "Thank you," I said, "because water grows where you thank it." He waited. "Sunday," he said again, as if the future needed his signature. "Sunday," I confirmed. We said goodnight, and he did not add anything to cheapen it. That was new. I held the phone a second, thumb on Zara's case sticker, and I felt nothing dramatic, only a small loosening behind my ribs, a knot deciding it had worked enough for one day. I walked the rooms the way you visit old trees in a garden, palms on familiar trunks, not to keep them up, but to remind them you are grateful. In the living room, the rug had a stain shaped like a country, from the time Ayan spilled sherbet and cried harder than the moment required until Zara laughed and showed him how sugar and baking soda can reverse a disaster if you catch it early. In our bedroom, Zara's dupatta still hung from the mirror corner, more scent than cloth now, the color of fragile stubbornness. I put 2 plates and 3 cups on the dining table and stood back. It looked like a rehearsal. Good. Healing needs practice like music. I slept lightly, my body still keeping watch, a soldier after the war who listens for one more grenade. Dawn came. Even the birds were careful. I made a grocery list with the same neat script I used when I had to write notes for Ion's teachers. Flour, cardamom, green chilies, milk, chicken, coriander. I added marigolds and then crossed it out and wrote roses, because a daughter-in-law's promise matters more than a husband's memory, and people should be allowed to keep their own kind of respect alive. At the market, men with scales built from string and faith shouted prices that they would honor without a calculator. A boy ran between stalls with a newspaper rolled tight. A woman bargained like a general. I bought too many tomatoes. It is a habit of mine. And Zara used to shake her head at the red pile and say, "We will feed the street at this rate, and then do it with quiet hands no one could photograph." Back home, I cooked a curry the way I learned to cook grief. Low heat, patience, stirring when it sticks. I set the table. I placed a small frame picture of Zara at the corner, not to watch over us like a judge, but to attend like a grandparent who is always happy to see you arrive and slow to get up when you leave. With every small act, the hours filled. At 5:45, I changed my shirt and smoothed it with my palm because Irons and I have never agreed. I stood at the window and saw evening settle on the street like powder sifted through a sieve. 2 kids kicked a bottle cap between them and ran when it made too much noise. At 6, the bell didn't ring. The knock sounded, 3 times. Polite. I opened the door. Ayan stood there with Hira, not dressed to impress, but dressed to be present. He held a bakery box tied with cheap string, the good kind that leaves lines on your fingers. Hira carried a short vase of roses, red like the inside of laughter. "As promised," she said. "And as learned," I replied, taking the flowers and stepping aside. Ayan hesitated, then looked down and saw the welcome mat that Zara had bought with a joke about dirt and destiny, and he smiled as if the mat folded time and let him walk on the earlier version of himself. They entered through the front door. We did not hug. Some bridges do better without trucks on them at once. We took off our shoes. We sat. The smell of curry met them like an ant. Hira went straight to the sink and washed her hands without being told. Ayan watched and followed, small things tilting the scale. We ate. We talked about simple matters, the neighbor who keeps a goat for reasons unknown, the traffic that has learned to be its own city, the price of eggs, and the miracle of people who keep buying them anyway. When the plates had been emptied and the spoons reached that comfortable quiet against empty steel, I poured tea. Ayan did not reach for his phone. I noticed and did not praise the obvious. Respect grows best when it is watered by consistency, not by compliments. After dessert, I stood and walked to the entry where the coat still hung like a gentle sentinel. I lifted it down and laid it over the back of my chair. "You were right," Ayan said, unprompted, as if the coat had commanded honesty. "It was never about the cloth." He swallowed and looked up at me. His eyes were his mother's, on the days she won an argument without raising her voice. "I don't know when I started performing," he said. "Maybe when people began clapping for things I hadn't finished. Maybe when paying back in words got me further than paying back in hours." He rubbed 2 fingers together like he could feel the texture of pride before he spoke it. "I forgot the cost of cheap sentences." I let him talk. Silence makes a shape men can pour their truth into without spilling. Hira reached under the table and threaded her fingers through his. "We will do better," she said, stepping onto the we like a boat, not awkward, not apologizing for balance. "I will do better," Ayan corrected, and she nodded without pulling her hand away. I sipped tea and looked at the photo of Zara in its corner, and I told her in my head that the boy with movie star bones had found a mirror that showed him more than angles. He had found the room where his father holds paper like prayer and still offers chairs after storms. Before they left, Ayan stood in the entry and faced the hook. He touched the mother-of-pearl button like a pilgrim touches stone. "Ami chose well," he said, and I could not speak for a moment because a sentence that simple can tilt a man back into the long river of love where he belongs. We walked to the door together. He turned at the threshold. "Dad," he said, "I will pay the loan. I will keep the conditions, not because of the money, because of the floor." I smiled the small, slow smile that had steadied the worst part of our night. "Good," I said. "Floors keep families from falling." They left through the front door, and the bell chimed behind them like a blessing. I watched from the window as they walked to their car, the roses held carefully as if they were carrying Sunday forward. The street returned to itself. The house breathed out. I hung the coat back on its hook and stood with my hand on it, palm warm against the fabric Zara had once chosen, because we can't afford things that don't last. She was right. Some things last because someone decides to keep repairing them. A button here, a seam there, a son, a father. I cleared the table. I washed the plates. The window fogged, then cleared, fogged, then cleared. The kettle cooled. I framed the receipt behind Zara's photo, not as a trophy, but as a witness. Proof that paper can be the quiet truth that stands up when noise tries to sit in your chair. Proof that calm is a kind of hammer. Proof that love is not all soft. Sometimes it is an architect, laying out rules that look like kindness in bright clothes. I sat one last time that night with my tea and looked at the empty chair beside me and spoke into the air as if the air could carry meaning back to where she is. Families don't take what's yours and tell you you're not welcome, I said. Families correct each other, then make room. The house agreed in the language only houses know. Outside, a motorbike coughed and then caught. Someone whistled a tune older than their teeth. Inside, the coat's shadow lay along the wall like a promise that light had made to return tomorrow. If you have a father who taught you to breathe to 4 when the words won't come, tell me in the comments. If you have a coat that remembers your family better than your relatives do, tell me its color. If you have ever taken out a piece of paper and placed it on a table so that people would stop pretending about what is true, tell me the look on their faces. And if this story found you in a place where respect still knows your address, do the small things that keep it alive, like, share, comment, and subscribe.